Well, it's Friday afternoon, so welcome to the Green Rush Live. And we're back once again. Jimmy's on vacation, so I'm joined by Curt Dalton, and I am thrilled to have him here of Cannabis.net. If you don't follow Cannabis.net, you should. Curt posts a lot of great articles written by people with very interesting names with a lot of very provocative stuff. Curt?
Right, thank you. This is Curt, Cannabis.net. I'm going to do a tech show for you guys this week. Some big news, exciting news, and kind of a look at the industry on the investment side. And David, of course, is well regarded and well known for his analytical brain power. He probably can analyze at least the Massachusetts marijuana industry and probably now every state in the Northeast and tell you what the square footage is worth, what each store is going to sell in the next 12 months, and who the social equity and economic and power applicants that are going to be delivering in the state of Massachusetts. So I couldn't be happier to join him. And we may have some special guests on the tech side that are going to talk about our main theme.
So we should have a great show. So Curt, walk us through a little bit about Apple's big announcement.
So this is a really interesting one for the cannabis space. To kind of walk you back, probably a couple weeks ago, Apple announced in kind of a not so dramatic headline that they would allow certain cannabis apps to be in the App Store, was the headline announcement. And if you kind of got into the dev part of it and look, there were certain things that now Apple is allowing licensed cannabis sellers / delivery / platforms to do. And a lot of people in the industry kind of shrugged it off, said it's great. You know, you have something like Ease or Drizzle in there. We'll talk about them later. Great, that's nice. I guess I'll be able to use that on my iPhone. But one of the biggest things it did, and is catching the world by storm now, as they're realizing it, is it allowed people to run transactions through the App Store that do not have to go to an external URL or do not have to leave the app. Now, technically, they're still sending the ordering platform, whether it's through like a Weed Maps or an MJ Freeway or a Jane, to the dispensary to run the order. But the race is now on, David, for the single app, as Amazon has taught us, 4 clicks with your thumb to order your cannabis, hit a button, my usual order, please, and go. And if you follow the story that we put up on this on Cannabis.net, that the entire industry just changed before your eyes and no one knows it, what happened right after this announcement? We had Ease, the most well-funded delivery platform in the world, go buy an MSO, David. We reversed the stream. Right. Usually the big fish buy the little fish. Not that Ease is a little fish, but comparatively speaking, they're going upstream to now buy MSOs to have vertical integration within their delivery analytics and their platform. And you say, that's awfully strange. And then Weed Maps came up with an announcement that they are now running transactions, or you're ordering through their app on the iPhone, so that you don't leave the Weed Maps app. So to the end consumer, you now have a continuous app you never leave to order. Followed up by, we said, what's now happening is what's in play is technology, not cannabis. Because as we've talked about on this show, David, it's a commodity. It's like kale, it's like broccoli, it grows in 12 weeks. Eventually, if you have so much price pressure on the top with more dispensaries and more people providing it, you have to find your margins in the bottom line, which means, how do I cut costs? How do I save on advertising? How do I get a customer for as little amount as money? So you start thinking about $20 clicks on Google for Blue Dream or Facebook ads. Now, all of a sudden, the tech companies are starting to reverse the transaction cycle, going to get providers, licenses, MSOs, and they see a gold mine here. This is the race to e-commerce. This is the Shopify game that cannabis is going to become. You also had Akerna, MJ Freeway. Jess was going to come on the show, couldn't make it today. Announce a new ordering platform and integration with dispensaries. You have Leafly, our friends, going to sue the state of Florida because they're blocking third-party applications and platforms ordering in their state. So Leafly is basically probably going to go to the Florida Supreme Court to try to rule this null and void, that third parties need access constitutionally as the law is written. So you're seeing, and Leafly happens to be going public shortly in a spec fund, about a $300 million valuation. The king of kings, Weed Maps, they're 1.7, actually probably higher, $2 billion valuation today. It's a tech race now. And We just had the announcement less than maybe 72 hours ago that Jane, mentioned in our article as a possible player, raised $100 million. They're a marketplace aggregator platform for processing orders near you, kind of a Weed Maps competitor, a Leafly competitor in this thing. So the money's flying around. The game has changed. The look ahead is going to be technology, websites with traffic, platforms that have analytics as far as the delivery, last mile people, just like Ease and some of the other guys are. So watch out. This is very, if you own and I know how you feel about this, if you own a brick and mortar dispensary and you're doing your projections out now, a year or two, you better realize what is going on. If you expect people just to walk into your dispensary on foot and just kind of find you, that is not going to happen. You're going to have to go through one of these platforms or these websites or these rankings or these maps, and your ordering platform has to be online. It's like liquor stores, like we've talked about, David. Did all the mom and pop liquor stores go away? Are dispensaries, brick and mortar done? No, but as soon as gas stations, convenience stores, the big boxes like Costco and Total Wine showed up, it sure made a big dent in their sales.
Yep, I agree with you, Curt. I mean, I've been going back to, let's say, everybody likes to say Cannabis 1.0. Okay, here we go. We've got it. And JJ's coming in. It's good to have you, JJ. Welcome.
It is a treat to be here.
Well, JJ, you're the guy we wanted on this show because we are talking cannabis websites, cannabis tech. Has the great revolution started? I know you guys picked up the article on Apple. What do you think the value of a major website like yours, the Fresh Toast, I should say, huge publication? Did you double in value with this new trend of tech sites, cannabis sites getting this kind of money and this funding?
Well, I'm not gonna say what our valuation is because I think that'd be a little awkward. But let me just say that the Politico just sold to a German company for $1 billion, and Politico is less than 10 years old, but they've done a great job getting out there and branding, and they did what the number one thing is they drove traffic. They have a huge traffic, and I didn't even know they have another tech site. Did you know that?
I did not know. What's it called?
Called Protocol, and it's all about tech.
And was that part of the sale?
That was part of the sale. They spent $1 billion for that, which I thought was pretty amazing. So it goes to show you, if you could deliver the traffic, you can get the chatter.
And you've certainly switched from mainstream heavier into cannabis over the last few years. That decision to turn looks very smart as of today.
Right. I think so too. And CBD, we forget, when we launched at the end of 2016, CBD was wrapped into the cannabis industry and was, a stepchild of it. And now it is expected to be a same size competing industry.
And what do you think? You're based out in Seattle on the West Coast. Has this tech trend as far as platforms, let's say it's Jess Billingsley at Akerna, or it's going to be now Socrates at Jane. Are they going to be able to make a run at a Weed Maps and Leafly? I mean, $100 million, what's that, a Series A even, maybe B for them. That doesn't sound like they want to be acquired. That sounds more like they want to be the third or go for it, kind of race to the top.
Right, and they want to race to the top, and good, bad, or indifferent, Weed Maps was the smartest player in the field. They work well with their clients. They slowly and steadily build relationships, and then they, when they did that SPAC, they merged in with a tech company, and so they're bringing everything to the market that people love. They deliver customers. They're consistent, and they have a lot of technology. So that's the three things that they really have, and it's all in the same space. And here's what you have to worry about with Jane or Leafly or others who want to come into that. There's only so many customers. We work with Brookings, and they think we have about 50 million people use cannabis a year. Now, let's say it goes full legalization. That might move to 75 or even 100, but there's 235 million who drink every year, who at least have one drink. So it's about half that size of that market. And when you look at the comparison for sites and drivers, it's really different.
Interesting. Do you see this going kind of regulation-wise when we get there? Is this going to be alcohol, cigarettes, or something else?
I think it'll be a mixture between alcohol and cigarettes. And and my thought to that is look, the industry is relatively small compared to other like-size industries. And the big drivers in our industry right now are alcohol, pharma, and tobacco. And alcohol and tobacco know how to do retail, know how to do restaurant bars. They know how to move product. They know how to work through the congressional system and the FDA to get that product in someone's hands. So we're more likely going to see it be regulated like liquor and tobacco, which allows us to be in a Walmart, a Walgreens, a CVS, a Target. It opens up incredible doors and will forever change how the product is sold.
Use the Fresh Toast with their huge, you have a huge medical following, do a lot of medical articles. Do you see an opportunity there, whether it's working with a provider, a dispensary, or a doctor's network for eventually selling through the Fresh Toast?
Oh, 100%. And the thing is what people don't really understand when it comes to medical marijuana is, we're driven a lot by insurance. And I think if you look a lot of things around right now with decisions hospitals are making, it's insurance based and getting reimbursed and so forth. And for doctors to prescribe cannabis now, mainstream doctors that say Providence or Humana or something like that, they take a lot of risk because their insurance doesn't cover any of it. And nor do they get reimbursed. So that becomes not only a risk, but it also becomes an opportunity for them to lose money because they're suddenly not reimbursed for a period of time or treatment.
And how did, we do have an ongoing chat. People can ask questions on Twitch and YouTube. We're live right now and the show gets edited. How did the name The Fresh Toast come up and how'd you pick it?
I wanted something that had no connotation, that when you're at work or if you're at your grandparents and they pull up the Fresh Toast, it just feels good. It was a robust dialogue with our marketing firm. Round one did not go well. Round two started off very poorly. They came up with this. We surveyed about 50 millennials, and out of the 50, 49 loved it.
That's a good way to do it. That's the old minimal viable product to test and see. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
Oh, no, I think that's great. I agree a lot with what JJ's saying. And you as well, Curt. I've been saying for several years that the value, the long-term value is in touching the customer. And up in Massachusetts and in other states, the initial rush is to get into cultivation. And I continue to scratch my head over that because the industry could tip upside down. Now that what we're seeing with Apple, well, JJ, I have a question for you. So we've seen Apple is now going to allow marijuana wraps in the store. And yet at the same time those articles are coming out, we're seeing articles how Instagram is starting to clamp down harder on marijuana firms. Anybody who has something marijuana related, accounts frozen. There's speculation that it's being done by artificial intelligence, not necessarily humans behind, and that it gets turned around. But Facebook is not friendly to marijuana. Obviously, Instagram isn't. But with Apple being a major consumer-facing tech company, how does that change the rest of Silicon Valley?
Well, we're unpacking a lot in your questions there. So let's take them too. Let's take Apple and let's take Facebook, Instagram separately.
Yep.
So Apple, if you work anywhere in the tech startup field, they're like, oh my God, Apple picked up our app. Well, hello, you and 50 million other people. And when you look at consumer behavior, no one downloads a beer app. How many beer apps do you have on your phone?
That.
Do you all drink beer?
Not me.
No.
But how many of your friends who drink beer refer to a beer app? There isn't really a beer app.
Right.
People don't want a beer app because they don't want to be defined by beer. When you look at the apps that people download, it's what they define. Cute kitties, Zillow. I love looking at real estate. I'm a fashionista. I rarely do you see the only real app that has been successful, which was founded by a friend of mine, is Seller Tracker. Have you heard of that? And you can scan the code. It tells you how much the bottle's worth and when you should drink it. And you can pull it up if you're getting ready to have a dinner or someone over, and you can pull up the bottle and it'll tell you if it's ready to drink right then or what it's worth. But in general, people don't have an app to buy beer. because you know why? Because they stop it at CVS and they pick it up, or they stop at Walgreens or the 7-Eleven or some bodega. And so being on Apple sounds amazing, not going to be transformative for the industry. Because people are trying to provide all, and when you look at, when we launched this with our first newspaper partner, they got 10 million hits a month, this newspaper partner. And I'm roughly making this. Out of that, 400,000 was through their app. Traffic isn't driven that much through the app anymore. It's driven through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So yeah, it's great for Apple. They're going to make a lot of money. There's going to be a lot more money raised. A lot more companies go under because of that. My belief and what we see, and I'm discussing with friends who are in the industry.
What's your take on Instagram and Twitter? I'm sorry, Instagram and Facebook.
So you bring up a good question about AI. AI is nothing more than data in, put into a system, and data out. So it does it. It's not an independent thinker. Facebook says, here's all these things that you have to look for. And if any of those triggers click, deny it. And so they're going through that whole same system that will treat it all. I've talked to some early Facebook people, and they're just not big on weed. They're not really big on weed. And Facebook is, along with other companies, are really looking at China, and China's so anti-weed that it makes a big difference. Instagram is huge for influencers, but the largest traffic driver to sites is Facebook. So Facebook is the one where it's going to have to be really convinced, and Facebook's not going to do it till there's greater federal legalization.
So if somebody's in this space, let's say, we kind of talk about this, you and I have been doing this a while, and they want to start a cannabis blog or a cannabis website. They're a blogger. What tips would you give them at this stage in 2021 for getting out there and getting traffic?
Well, one, what's your goal? What's your end game? Is it because you're passionate and you're an evangelical and this is really important? Then great, you go have a great time. Are you trying to build a business to live on, live well, or sell? Whole different thing. One, as y'all know, it's 3 years. Google, Apple, Bing, all are going to wait to see how consistent you are. Do you publish every day? How much do you publish? The whole bit. They're going to look at that every day. And you're not going to get that traffic unless Kim Kardashian or The Rock tweets about you, or Instagram and Facebook's about you every week. You've got to slowly build that reputation within that and to show it. It's really a hurry up and wait game. So that's the number one thing is people will talk, people think that they instantly get, I'm going to ask all my friends on Facebook and I'll probably have 1 million people. That never happens. Sorry for that. My window's open.
No worries.
Rough neighborhood, JJ said,
Live in downtown Seattle.
Rock and roll.
Two, you have to really figure out a multifaceted revenue stream. Advertising doesn't cut anymore. And you have to stay dedicated and consistent. Bustle boomed and then pulling back a little bit. And I think you saw, what was it? They said, 'tis the season. Vibe just laid off had another round of layoffs because they overgrew and they tried to do too many. But the biggest thing is understand your customer and your consumer. Figure out who are you talking to and what do they want to hear. I'm sorry.
Is the ultimate play for websites, like you said, the ad revenue is not going to get you your Lamborghini each month. Is the ultimate play to take that traffic and those eyeballs and convert it to an order and then get paid residually or get a payout like as an affiliate, unless you're going to be completely vertically integrated, as a designer?
Well, for every website, it ultimately is converting that customer into a greater revenue stream. And it could be in advertising, it could be direct, it could be through affiliate, it could be, which is harder, it could be through somehow monetizing them, getting them to make a purchase that you get a cut. There's multiple ways to slice that peach, since it's summer and peachorama here in Seattle. But it's, you have to recognize, and you always have to look at your ability to be able to do that. But if you're at 10,000 a month, it's almost impossible. You've got to be huge to be able to monetize.
And you're super fashionista and into brands. What would you tell brands right now that are looking to drive traffic, say it's through the Fresh Toast or another site? What should they be doing to get more eyeballs?
Be more mainstream. I mean, yeah, that's what goes over well. I mean, Krispy Kreme, Red Robin, McDonald's, Jimmy John's, Bud Light, Polo. Mainstream sells big numbers because people feel comfortable with that.
And do you have, I know you're out in Seattle, do you have any favorite brands you can share that you like what they're doing? Or do you kind of look for a good deal at the dispensary?
Well, I have to say, Magic Kitchen here blows it out, and Fat Panda has some of the best reputations in the Northwest. I mean, they're really good. Magic Kitchen's great. There's, but here's another example going into that. You look at PAX. PAX is a mediocre product, but the people behind PAX did the great thing is they marketed the heck out of it, and it's now, the top selling. McDonald's, Jimmy John's, which I do like Jimmy John's, Subway. No one says, oh my God, that's a great sandwich. It's price affordable. People know they know what they're going to get, and it's easy. And that's what people want.
Consistent and convenient.
Yeah.
Right? That's Subway.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, that kind of plays into the theme of the article's race to the bottom as far as, it's going to be, like I said, Budweiser's #1 selling beer. It's at 98%, you still have these craft brews, but like you said, if you want to get a lot of sales and comfort and people like, know, or trust, you got to have more of a mainstream brand than a segmented brand that's geared toward female millennials or male millennials, whatever you slice it.
And let's say the legal market is 16 million people. So, and by the way, it's Bud Light's #1 selling brand.
Sorry.
So let's say the mainstream market is 16 million people in the United States. 50, let's say there's 50 million people doing it, 16, or let's say even say 20 million people are buying it legally. Okay, you can either go after 20 million and make a quarter, but compete for that 20 million, or you can go out for $1 million and make $1. So if you get 1% sales on either one, you're gonna make a lot more going after that 20 million.
That's right. David, how are we looking? Any comments, questions? What do you got over there?
Well, we got a lot of comments. We got a lot of comments about people who are wondering what's going to happen to the marijuana retailers when it starts to sell in whether it starts to sell in convenience stores and gas stations. And I think that's a long way off, primarily because, and each state's licensing scheme is different, but Massachusetts is the one I know best. I'm starting to learn about New Jersey. You have to have the license to sell it, and it's a limited number of licenses that are out there. So it's not like brand new kind of chips come out and every convenience store says, oh, we have to have these new JJ McKay chips on our shelf, right? This is different. It's a regulated product. You have to have a license to sell it. It's not as easy. It reminds me 30 years ago when I was in the equipment finance industry, I had a client who owned 2 coffee shops. One of them was in the little enclave of Auburndale, part of Newton, Massachusetts, on Commonwealth Avenue. Phenomenal location. Dunkin' Donuts wanted to open up a coffee shop there, and they couldn't get in. The town elders wouldn't allow a Dunkin' Donuts over there. This guy decided he was going to go out on his own, buy his own metal stamping shop, needed some capital, and what he did was he sold the shop to Dunkin' Donuts. They said to him, you can take all your equipment, take all your inventory, you can take everything, go open up someplace else. All they wanted was the lease, so they had the location and the license so they could go to the town or the city and say, now we want to change the name. That's going to bode well if people think that all of a sudden this is going to be able to be sold in gas stations and convenience stores. That means they're either going to have to, the gas stations and convenience stores are going to have to try to change the law to expand the license count, or they're going to buy up small operators and say, we're going to close you down and move you into our store. Right? I don't really see it as a major risk of beyond
David,
that.
I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit, but I'll let
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We've seen this happen before. This is not new. So maybe it's because y'all are so young, but remember back in the day when you could pick up a VCR and a VCR tape?
Yep.
And by the way, do you know why we went with VCR rather than Blu-ray? Do y'all have the answer to that?
No.
The porn industry decided to go all in with VCR, and they begin outstripping Blu-ray, and that's why it fell to the wayside. So porn led the way on the digital. So, but you remember,
the way on streaming.
yeah, and on
We wouldn't have
secure online
streaming without porn.
and secure online payments, they're phenomenal. So you look at when you could first get videos, it was all in these local stores, neighborhoods, everything like that. And then it transitioned to a bigger player of Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. But ultimately what killed them is that you could rent it at your local grocery store. So all of a sudden now you're in a one-stop. And, you know, Bob's Bodega in downtown Boston, or that may have a struggle, but I can tell you based on the industry, liquor, retail, pharma, tobacco will get it into Walmart, Walgreens, Target, CVS, and they're all, you know, I don't think anybody in an urban or heavy suburban area is ever more than 5 minutes from one of those 4 stores.
Right.
And that
I don't disagree with you on that.
Say what? And that's what's
I don't disagree with you. I've believed for a long time on the medical side that it's when it becomes federally legal, CVS and Walgreens are going to dump a lot of money into lobbyists so they can begin to sell it. And who can argue with CVS or Walgreens selling medical marijuana? They have the facilities.
They're also one of the largest sellers of beer. You know, CVS and Walgreens are the largest sellers of beer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
When was the last? When you walk into a CVS or Walgreens, there's a whole section. There's a half aisle just related to beer and wine, if not a whole aisle on beer.
Not in Massachusetts yet for us, right? Is that right, David? We're a little
Right,
more-
not up here, but I remember when I was down in New Orleans, I was amazed at how much beer there was down in the CVS.
Oh, the entire West Coast, Chicago, you know, Mississippi.
Well, you mentioned something interesting, the lobbyists, and this is kind of predates the Apple story, is the Jeff Bezos, Amazon. So that's kind of the elephant in the green cannabis room right now, where if you're not familiar, Amazon has come out pro-legalization, not necessarily because Jeff's a big fan, but because they need to find workers who can pass a drug test, and not many people could at $15 to $17 an hour could pass the marijuana drug test. So Amazon has changed their policies. There's no longer a marijuana test. But JJ, the elephant in the room, can Weed Maps overtake Amazon and kind of become the Amazon of weed, or is Amazon going to be the Amazon of weed in 3 to 5 years?
Amazon sells liquor.
Yes.
I think that's your answer.
So
And Amazon is probably the largest retailer for CBD currently.
oh, sure. Just based on sheer volume, they put something up, they'd probably be number one in a matter of 12 hours, no matter what it is.
But
Is
look, you know, could Weed Maps become the Kohl's of cannabis? Absolutely. They could still drive a lot of things, and they're going to support people offline. You know, what you're going to have is once Amazon begins doing it, you'll have vendors who sell strictly through Amazon and nobody else.
Cannabis vendors will just get a license and have an Amazon shop.
And once again, they're going to be selling the Bud Light of cannabis, not, you know, the Veuve Clicquot or the Cristal.
Hey, JJ, I got a question for you. So I've believed for a few years that actually, let me back up. So we've got a lot of small growers or individuals who are getting cultivation licenses in Massachusetts who are going to have small grows. And I've been really clear with folks. I'm not a believer in cultivation because when you can transport it across state lines, nobody's growing pot in a warehouse. I just can't see the economics working. It's going to go to the places where it grows best because they can produce it the cheapest, right? That's why we don't grow avocados and apples in warehouses. And I get the same response is, well,
Don't let the privateer people hear you say that.
I'm sorry?
Don't let the privateer people hear you say that, because so much money has been invested in Canada on inside grow.
Oh, absolutely. I just had this discussion with somebody yesterday. I said, IIPR is doing great as a stock, but boy, their whole business is based upon indoor grow. And if indoor grow tanks, they're going to have a lot of excess real estate on hand, but that's a separate issue. So a lot of the folks I speak to who know the plant, right? And I readily admit, I don't know the plant. I understand business, and I find the disconnect between the federal and state laws fascinating. That's kind of what I got into the marijuana business by accident. But I'll point out to them that be careful if you're going to put a lot of money into a cultivation operation. And they all say the same thing. I'm going to grow really high quality weed. Year and a half ago, I started to talk to package store owners about wine. And what I learned without a highly scientific study is the high end of the wine market represents about 3% of revenue. It's often bought as a gift, often around the holidays. Wine snobs will go into the store and start to chat up everything they know about wine with one of the clerks for like 15 to 20 minutes and then leave with a $15 to $25 bottle of wine. I think that that's the same psychology for weed. Am I right or am I wrong? Is there going to be a really robust high end of the market, or is it going to be limited?
Once again, I think there's two things there. So one, weed is not this magical plant that's come out that we've never seen anything like before. When you have a small farm, whether it be in Massachusetts or Washington or Mississippi, that grows tomatoes, they can be the best tomatoes ever. But if it's a small farm, you can only make so much money per square foot. And a lot of those small farms, because they can't deliver to where the key customers are, wind up selling to farmers markets, maybe the occasional high-end grocery store, but you don't make a fortune off of that. The people who make a fortune are like Tilray and Canopy, who have huge operations who could fulfill a supply chain. And so I agree with you. Small cultivation things are very tough and tends to be passion projects. And then two, the majority of the market is, that goes back to our beer discussion. Bud Light is the #1 intoxicant in the United States as we speak.
What do you think is the most popular price point for wine in the US?
$10.
Yep, like $10 to $15 bottles of wine. I heard that
I was going to price is right. I was going to go $9.99.
You're there. 70%, the folks that I spoke to, 70% of them, they told me 70% of their sales on wine are $10 to $15 bottles of wine. And then from there, it's the 25 to 50.
Okay, and let's look at that. What are the 4 biggest retailers in the United States? Brick and mortar retailers.
Walmart,
Costco, Target,
Home Depot,
Sam's, Walgreens, and CVS. And the majority of their wines are priced between, $7 and $15.
Yep.
Boom, there you go.
Yeah, and the other issue is you care about premium cannabis if you're gonna smoke it or do something with the plant. But if you're gonna buy an edible or you're gonna buy an infused beverage, and boy, we just had a company in Massachusetts that was acquired, and these guys aren't that old, right? This is a very young company. They got $10 million in cash, $10 million in stock, and a $40 million earnout. Everybody seems to be all over the concept of beverages. There's an investment group, and we have those folks on the show regularly. They're now making sure that any dispensaries they back have coolers up front because they think beverages are going to be such a big deal. If you're going to take and infuse the product, you're going to infuse cannabis into another product. It doesn't matter who grew it. It doesn't matter whether it's great or it's not great. What matters is the chemical profile in that 30 or 50 gallon drum that somebody's going to buy when they do that. So you can grow it outdoors as long as when you process it and take the parts of the plant separate them to get the oil out. As long as it's clean and it's got the right chemical profile, that's what the industrial users are going to care about. They're not going to care about it was grown by the best grower. And at least that's my theory.
David, you're talking the truth. You're not trying to talk to people to get them to give you $10 million because you have this crazy idea.
Well, wait a minute. Let me just play the devil's advocate and defend Jay-Z and Beyonce here, who are going for the iPhone and the $50 pre-roll. Like Apple exists, $1,200. Apple was the first company to throw out $1,000 phone, and we were all shocked. So someo's going to have a high end. And you're right.
Well, let's look at this. And where did Beyonce make her money to make that investment?
Entertainment.
And her second biggest chunk of money came from
Her husband?
her $100 million, I think, Coke deal, Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. Okay.
So she used low-end money to invest in high-end products.
Right. But my point is,
Yeah.
I don't know which celebrity it's going to be. Someone's going to have the iPhone. It's like someone's going to have the real expensive stuff because people buy Ferraris, people buy Lambos. You can
Right.
have fun to do the same exact, ride. So
You have, once again, it's a numbers game. We don't have a mature market yet. We have a still emerging market. People are still experimenting. And here's the other thing that goes back to infused beverages. People know what red wine, white wine, tequila, vodka, gin, bourbon, beer does to them. People currently, until 3 years after legalization, when it's all regulated, people get different reactions from different things. Sometimes I'm a little too high, sometimes I'm not high enough, all this other stuff. People like what they know. And that's why a lot of people, and we were talking about this, we just did a story on this today. People, when you had these going into retail stores that had like a Cheesecake Factory of menus, slowly drifted back to their dealer because their dealer knew exactly what they wanted and they didn't have to make a decision. It's a very complicated process that involves, 5 hours of, ooh, this wasn't the trip I wanted, but I'm on it and I can't get off.
yeah, very interesting. Will the medical cart, let's say, market drift away like we've seen in individual states when rec becomes legal? Even the cost of the licenses on states, when you look at what a medical license was selling for, and then when rec came in, wham, the bottom fell out. Is that going to be a national? Will medical go to the wayside when it's recreational and crossing the state line?
Well, I mean, if you're really a patient advocate, what you want to see when it goes national, you'll have a lot of medical companies come in and really do quality grade, and you can get exact percentages, exact dosage, and you'll have a higher quality of product that is way more effective than it is now.
And what happens to CBD? We rip the Band-Aid off. THC's flying around on planes and on buses and trucks. CBD, is that the ugly? We remember her or him like 2 years from now?
Oh, and look at, does anybody know fish oil and garlic oil and GNCs are still going strong, baby. It's going to make you smart and it's going to relax you and help you sleep. Yeah, as long as there's infomercials, as long as there's pop-up ads, there's going to be CBD.
What will the media market look like when there's legalization? I don't know if I've ever asked anybody that. So there's legalization. We got apps that are taking order and shipping it from California, the Emerald Triangle. And you have media companies right now like yourself and myself and Pro Cannabis Media. What do we look like and who's our client and our reader at that point?
Well, one, I'm going to throw that back at you, but let me just say, why would if it's federally legal, why if I'm in Oklahoma would I have something shipped to Seattle or from California? I go to CVS to get what I need, or I go to the 1 or 2 high-end stores in my town.
Well, that's the Amazon.
Oklahoma, I agree with you. Oklahoma gave out so many retail licenses. When it becomes legal, every CVS will sell it. Right?
That's a bad example, though. They gave them out like water. So let's well, that would make the argument that
I'm just saying. No one. Rarely do people order wine in from other states. They never order beer in from other states. Why would they order weed in from across the country when they could pick it up down the street? And hello, we're in a system that we want a refund if we don't get our pizza in 20 minutes. So people like that immediate gratification. Now, you could tell me about the media landscape and then I'll give you my impression.
I think it will open up a lot of ad spends because a lot of these companies and these franchises can't cross a state line, so their budgets are limited. So as you know, geo-targeting always comes up with people that want to advertise on our sites because I only have a dispensary in LA or I'm in LA. I don't care what your Denver's traffic's like. So I think when that changes and they want to know, all right, how many people, men 35 to 42, because that's what we're selling these to, do you have? So I think it definitely opens it up. But the downside is, does that mean Google and Facebook and all those guys now say it's on AdWords, AdSense, swipe ups from Instagram, we're good. Obviously, people also, almost like the SEO game, right? How much do you invest in creating content that ranks well and gets in Google? Or do you just say zero on that, throw it all in measurable results from Google, Facebook, drive traffic that way.
David, do you have an opinion?
I didn't catch all of that, JJ, because I'm constantly looking back and forth between us.
To be fair, he's monitoring the questions and comments, so he's going to do both.
One is we have to get back to the consumer. You know, how many beer magazines are there?
5?
Like 2.
2, okay.
Where can I learn about beer? People Magazine, Instagram, the Today Show. And so you're going to see this. And so it's going to come down to library of content and be able to drive big numbers because your content fits the consumer. You know, yes, there are people yes, there is wine connoisseur and wine enthusiast. But if you ask people in the wine industry, the 3rd hour of the Today Show with Hoda and Jenna generates more wine sales than either one of those magazines.
Wow.
So it's about your reach and reaching the consumer and talking about other stuff.
So that's going to give power to influencers. Like you just named 2 people on a big TV show watched by people with buying power. So you're saying the same thing with cannabis, even off of Instagram, on TV, or whoever.
Yeah, but it's semi. So, you know, you and I have both been to trade shows, receptions, etc. And I'll have someone come up to me and say, I'm going to be the biggest female cannabis blogger ever. I'm going to be like the new version of the hot mommy blogger. And I'm like, and so you need to do all this for me. You need to invest in me. You need to give me a platform. I'm like, why do you think it is? Because I'm just really good and I know it really well. I'm like, how are you going to money? People will make money. When you look at a mommy blogger, the way she makes money is because she sells diapers and cribs and clothes and food. There's multiple platforms that support her in making money. When you look at the cannabis, you're going to have, you know, 3 platforms maybe to be able to influence that. And people are going to go to someone like, I don't know, let me think of somebody, like a Melissa McCarthy or a Danny DeVito or a Bieber, who has a huge following and occasionally sells Apple phones, Lamborghinis, and pre-rolls. That's where it's going to be. People who want to be the huge, just focus on cannabis are going to be sidelined. There's no one who's the biggest ice cream. I mean, there are, but for the mainstream public, we don't know it. Who do you know is the #1 ice cream influencer in the country? And yet, as we sit here on a Friday afternoon, 87% of America has ice cream in their refrigerator.
And it's hot.
Not us. I finished it all yesterday.
But I mean, no one focuses just on being the ice cream influencer.
Right.
But this,
right.
This
That's
goes
because
into, David, you like this kind of question. So is there somebody lurking, and David, I don't know if you even know this, that Lantern has started delivering cannabis in Massachusetts. They're a alcohol delivery company, kind of came into bloom during COVID, and they have ads everywhere. Order your cannabis through, it's called Lantern Now. So David, you love the business side. Is there companies we're not looking at that are going to come in with huge payrolls, or I should say big bank accounts? Uber, why can't Uber vertically integrate and put these when it's federally legal in their car? Is GM, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch as an automaker.
No, it's not Uber, but like Drizzly. There's a lot of alcohol. Drizzly will be the one who will do cannabis.
Well, no, that's Lantern. Lantern is Drizzly on the weed side.
And their app is called Lantern Now to get cannabis. So yeah, that's what.
And my guess, when it goes federal legal, they'll get rid of Lantern. It'll all be Drizzly.
Yeah, that would make sense. Just for branding.
They're doing that just to keep it. Their attorneys made them do that.
Yep.
Interesting. All right, comments, questions. What do we got, David? Check the online, touch the Twitch channel, the YouTube channel. Anybody else?
So we got a lot of action going on the YouTube channel, but we don't have that many questions. We got a lot of debate going back and forth about a number of the issues. You'll be happy to know, Curt. Treebeard, who's out of Massachusetts, says Maine bud should be some of the best around, but he also thinks it's kind of weird. But Curt's very bullish on the Maine market.
Very bullish. It's the Wild West of the East Coast. So for a couple of reasons, it's the way life should be, to borrow their slogan. But actually, Maine's a very poor state. When you get off the oceans and the lakes, I think it's like a little above Mississippi. So the incentive to grow legally and not legally is huge there for extra money. Good climate, but again, we do have a January and February and May are not conducive to those high indicas. So yeah, there'll be some issues with indoor there.
So Levi now wants to know, JJ, how he can become the national ice cream influencer.
Oh,
Well, tell Levi, smart, and thanks for listening. It's a great show. But the thing is, you build up a clientele and you have to know everything about it. And you have to figure a way. I follow some hot sauce sites on Instagram, and they find something every day that's unique, interesting, and visually engaging. And they work it hard. It's a lifestyle.
So interesting comment. Aquatic Amigos, weed is killing our kids. Now, he probably didn't see the article from the other day where, who was it with the feds who stepped up and said, we were wrong. Legalizing marijuana does not, if anything, it helps us out with underage use. It's going down, not up.
Oh, yeah, that's a common thing. JJ and I both have those articles.
JJ, did you catch that article?
Yes.
I think it was on Tom Angel's site, Marijuana Moment.
And we've done stories like that before. The big thing, is, should kids smoke weed? No. Should kids smoke beer, drink beer? No. It's the exact same thing. And there's things in it. I've argued at cocktail parties with someone who has a drink in my hand and they're like, "You're killing our kids." I'm like, because they can't get alcohol at your house? And then they're like, "Well, that's totally different." I'm like, same developmental issues.
So, all right, JJ, I'll put you on the spot. You can't name any present company excluded. A hedge fund or a VC comes up and says, "Who do you like in the tech game or the internet game of cannabis? We're believing this whole tech revolution." What are you telling them?
Well, one, that's a big thing is, what are you doing? I mean, what technology? I think I would go with anybody who can prove the seed to sale cleanness, because that's what's going to come in for medical marijuana, and you'll have a pharma that buys that, can prove it, that's FDA compliant. Point of sale stuff, hello, Microsoft already does that. When it's fully legal, they'll just flip it over. Banking, once it's legal, boom, US Bank, Bank of America, boom, there it is. A lot of people who are trying to be the alternative, once it's federally legal, that'll all go away, because you'll want to buy a system where you have a full support. But if you could figure out, because cannabis is such a volatile plant, if you can get someone who's technology who can track that seed to sales, so you can, when it goes into a pill or goes into something that's going to be sold by General Mills, you can have that. That's where the technology and who the best is in that. And I wouldn't invest unless they have someone from pharma involved who can prove that can be sold to a pharma company.
How long from the time it becomes federally legal until the industry tips on its head and the new paradigm, whatever it's going to be, takes place? 4
years. Look what we're seeing in
4
Canada.
years.
Look what we've seen in Canada. We've seen it in Canada. We've seen it in California. Big hideout, because everybody's like, "Woo, it's going to be the best thing ever. We're going to replace alcohol. It's going to be the wonderful thing." And then all of a sudden, "Oh, I have to deliver this tomorrow. We need some more money. Our stock's really up, but we sold some of it to do some other things." And then you see it, and then you have the federal regulations, and whether it's Canada, California, or the US, no federal regulator says, "This is hot. We need to get, we're gonna work extra hours to get this done." They're gonna be like, "Stand over in that line." So it'll take about 4 years. But at that point, it will be, people will be used to seeing it and will no longer be considered such a big taboo. I mean, let's look at Fox News. Fox News covers weed now as a business, not as a culture war.
That's a big shift too. I mean, obviously Fox News has a demographic that is generally not pro-cannabis, among other things. So that's a shift right there. I mean, especially with some of the things that, some of the news clips of their own analysts and their own people kind of using the slang language and the smirks and the laughable. So, hey, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, but Fox News has now shown their own viewer studies that said the majority of their viewers think it should be legal.
So there's two comments in the chat I'm going to share with you. One is Keith Vance. Alcohol is killing everybody and should be a Schedule I narcotic. Interesting. is I'm going to be speaking at the NECAN New Jersey conference, and there's a bit I do about the political and business history of marijuana, and I go through the 1800s right up until the present time, and I spend a little bit of time on the findings of the Schaefer report. I was just flipping through some papers to see if I could find the quote, but Ray Schaefer, who was appointed by Richard Nixon to finally put the final nail in the coffin of marijuana, he spent a year going around the country, had a staff of 73 people. They spent millions of dollars, issued an 1,100, nearly 1,200 page report. And at the end, he concluded marijuana shouldn't simply be rescheduled, it ought to be descheduled. And one of the things he said, Keith, was if anything could be considered, should be considered a heavy duty drug. I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but I think it was alcohol followed closely by tobacco. So you're not too far off. If we're up to Ray Schaefer, alcohol and tobacco would both be on Schedule 1.
But remember, through the Middle Ages, it was safer to drink wine and beer / mead because it was processed and was safer than drinking water. Alcohol is so ingrained into culture worldwide, it'll never get rescheduled.
Yep.
But it is well known to be, it is so much easier. No one's overdosed from weed, they just doze off.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. What was the other comment, David? You said that was one of them.
That was another one. The other one is Justin thinks indoor weed's not going to go away. The buds are not apples or any kind of perennial fruit, and it should be noted seriously. And, Justin, we won't know until it becomes federally legal, but I do not see people growing weed in indoor warehouses. It is too expensive. It consumes too much electricity. They're now estimating 10% of all commercial electricity in Massachusetts is growing weed in warehouses. So when you look at the green side of things, it's not very good. And even if you can't grow year round outside, if you can get a good product, like back to what we were talking about with wine, those $10 to $15 bottles of water, bottles of wine, if you can get a good product, it's going to sell. And if you can produce it at a low enough cost for 6 months out of the year, you're going to make more money than somebody who's growing year round in a warehouse.
And let's look at the black market. Who's making money in the black market? Southern California, the American South, Mexico. Right. All outdoor grow, very robust.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we put that in the Apple article in the race for margins too. We said, well, what about Mexico? When this thing goes full on UN treaties, cannabis is okay, import, export, you guys got it. Yeah, I think either JJ, you had the article or we might have put it up where, what do we say, in like 5 years, you're not going to be smoking or using, at least in your edibles, at least in your products. It's all going to be from another country because the cost of electricity, labor, and even the transportation will undercut American, labor the costs as well as growing in water. So in 5 years, are you even able to, are your products made in Mexico? How's that?
Yeah. I mean, look at California. California is a great place for grow right now, but they're struggling with water.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, definitely.
For California, avocados, nuts, and cannabis, 3 of the hardest on a water supply system to grow.
Yeah, that's true. We put up a quick piece today about how Cali farmers are just getting killed by high taxes, wildfires, and the illicit market. In the article, it's quoted that some of the decent quality was $200 to $400 a pound this season. There was this oversupply. Again, you can't cross the state line, no efficient market. What's going on in Oregon? I know you guys have gone the roller coaster of price from giving it away, there was too much, to then it kind of came back. Where's the prices in Oregon now?
You mean in Washington?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry.
It's fairly stable, but once again, growers are at the bottom of the food chain. It's the products and some of the retailers are making the big money.
Yeah. Well, again, if the retailers and the product makers can get it for so much cheaper, they don't change their price. Hey, that's a good year right there. I just improved my margins by my ingredient costs being 30% less than I estimated for next year.
And at the end of the day, the retailer drives the price. My customers are buying X amount price point. And then they're going to look for products that come down that thing. So the product people are going to say, well, that's the only, I can only sell it for this much. And they're only buy flour or, the original product at this much.
Yeah, good point.
Cultivators have to go through 2 customers while they're setting their prices.
And everybody's going to get paid along the line. So that's why websites and traffic that you can convert for a penny into your sales funnel with a rewards program are the future.
Well, I'll never forget, about 3 years ago, we had one of our investors ask us to have an investment firm come in because they wanted to ask us questions. I was excited. And then he made it real point. He was like, oh, big suit, he's like, just up front, we're not normally investing in cannabis and we're not interested in your company at all, but I sent you the deck. And I'm like, yeah, I looked at the deck. I'm like, he says, well, what questions and what insight can you give me? I said, well, right off the bat, since it's a grow operation, do you have anybody in your firm who specializes in agriculture or in commodities? And he literally does this. I want us to value the time here. We're focused on investing in a cannabis company. And what I really was looking for your expertise in cannabis. I'm like, yes, this is a grow operation. So and he's like, and I'm like, you understand a grow operation is a farm, right? It is a farm and it's growing product and you have to go seasonally of what the market will bear. And all of a sudden you saw this light come on to him because he was so caught up in all the swirl about missing out on the cannabis gold rush that he hadn't really looked at what was going on. And when you're a cultivator, it's a farm and small farmers are not doing well in America.
Yeah, neither are small California cannabis farmers with their prices right now. And, again, efficient markets, if you could ship that from the Emerald Triangle to New York City right now, all of a sudden everything evens out and we get the curve, the roller coaster flattens and we can know what prices of high grade, of, like a swag grade that you're going to put in oils or make edibles out of. So JJ, it's over an hour. I appreciate your time. I know it's, you're getting ready for a big night on Friday, but thank you for joining us on our tech show today. And how can people get in touch with you? Check out the Fresh Toast. What else can they do?
Check out the Fresh Toast. If you have a question for us, info@the Fresh Toast works great. And make sure you not only read the Fresh Toast, but cannabis.net, because Curt is smart and a great guy. And David, always a treat to see you.
All right. Thanks for coming on, JJ.
Thanks, JJ, you're great.
Ciao.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to see if we can wake Dan French up because we normally take a break at 4:20 and we're well past that. It'll allow Curt and I a moment to grab a drink, and we'll be back to you shortly.
So I think there's one very important difference between me and most of my team members and other cannabis accounting firms, especially outsourced cannabis accounting firms. With a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies, working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. It's the Friday afternoon, the Green Rush Live. Your host, me, David Rabinovitz. Usually I'm playing the Ed McMahon sidekick with Curt Dalton, who's really leading this thing. I'm just kind of playing the background here. So we had a great discussion with JJ McKay of the Fresh Toast. We're probably not going to go all the way to 6 today, but we are going to talk a little bit about a show that we're going to have coming up on another subject, right? We talked a bit about the impact of Apple putting marijuana apps in the Apple Store. The other really big news that's been circulating that we talked about last time Curt was with us was a Vanderbilt University Law School on interstate commerce and cannabis. And Professor Robert Mikos posits that, in fact, it is presently legal to ship marijuana over state lines, and that the laws that restrict it at the state level, he believes, are unconstitutional. I've been reading through the paper. It's a great read, but if you really want to understand it, you got to spend time because you got to cross-reference a lot of stuff he says in there. Curt's written about it. His article's getting a lot of traction and a lot of shares. And hopefully at the end of September, we're going to have an episode where we're going to be joined by the professor, and we're going to talk about in-depth interstate commerce of marijuana, because that will really turn the industry on its head. That would turn it on its head just about as much as federal legalization. But anyway, I don't want to hog all the air, Curt. Tell us a little bit about the article you put together.
Yeah, they're kind of one and the same. Federal legalization will be crossing a state line as part of whether it's Schumer's bill or not. So this is really great piece. It's about 40 pages. I think it's a really nice read. It's not written in super legalese if you want to cross-reference the footnotes, but a normal person, non-lawyer, can read it very easily. And he basically argues that the dormant clause in the Constitution would probably hold up if someone were to challenge it, whether it goes to the Supreme Court or some big court, that shipping across the state line is actually legal with cannabis right now. Will it happen? Will someone actually, kind of go do it in front of the cameras and get arrested? No, because we're getting closer to legalization. And we wrote the article, Shipping Marijuana May Be Legal, and that got syndicated too. So you probably, if you've seen that title somewhere, with a variety of different pictures, different publishers are putting over the picture we used or using different pictures. I thought this was the show this week. That's why I came on, but he's not here. But that's okay. We'll do it again. It's a really fascinating thing if someone were to challenge that. And this came up probably about a year ago when Oregon was trying to figure out interstate commerce when they had way too much weed and the prices were, it was like $1 a gram. They're just giving it away. It's like the milk farmers pouring out their milk. They tried to get interstate commerce with kind of Washington and California through some very old kind of state to state. If we're touching, we can do things. Second time it came up was the New York, New Jersey Port Authority, as they were getting ready and thinking of legalization, has some agreement from, I'll make up a date, right? 1706. that kind of supersedes federal law. If it's between the ports of New York and New Jersey, they can decide. So there's all these little quirky kind of things trying to, that wormhole going in to try to get that crossing a state line without breaking federal law and getting in big trouble. And that paper is excellent. I mean, he's not writing it as a cannabis advocate. He's not writing it as a, against cannabis. He's saying, here's what the law says. Here's what this dormancy clause says. It probably is legal, but again, you're going to have to go through the rigmarole, and I don't know who wants to do that. And certainly a publicly traded company and someone that it'd be very advantageous for them to be able to cross the state line and sell or ship. It's just, are you really willing to risk a couple of years in court, millions of dollars? Maybe your license is taken away in the meantime. But I look forward to talking to the professor.
That's right. And I think what's interesting about that is, while a number of people say it would have to be a large MSO, I question whether the MSOs, when they sit down and they begin to analyze their business, if they're really going to want to allow it to be shipped across state lines. Because remember, those are the folks that have huge investments in these big indoor grow facilities. And if interstate commerce renders those useless, that they may be the ones who are going to be looking for the greatest degree of protectionism.
Oh, totally. I think you're 100% right. They don't want that because they have geoprotection just in their, let's say, 10-mile radius, as well as, a state line. It's going to be these guys that's happening now, like the Apple article. It's going to be the Drizzlies. It's going to be the Eases. It may be the Weed Maps and Leaflies. Well, Leafly's suing the state of Florida to allow orders to pass through their platform and get that part straightened out so that when the time comes, whether it's buying licenses, dispensaries, we've already seen one MSO, maybe not the biggest, or the big four, but you had a smallish kind of tech company that's going buy it, a multi-state operator and take over. So this is not going to be a flash in the pan. I can't see how Weed Maps' war chest has to include either selling licenses, a similar setup MSO, buying up all the websites with traffic and mapping so that they're just the predominant. If Google decides to turn on their kind of dispensary mapping, that's always been the knock on Weed Maps as well. Google could do it, and Yelp. Well, the Yelp and Google exist. They seem to coexist. I think Weed Maps will survive, and they're the monster in the room. If they decide to turn on multi-state buying and shipping, basically taking over dispensaries or platforms that deliver, I don't know if the cannabis industry realize what could happen if that's Amazon. It's them and Amazon from there on out. So be prepared. It's exciting times in tech.
Right. And it'll mean that you could create something of that nature quickly, right? Think about it. Amazon started in the early 90s, if I recall. Right? It's been around a long time. It takes a long time to be an overnight success. Yeah. But in weed, it could be a little different. If some of these tech companies are able to really ratchet up quickly and seize the market that way, imagine what they'll be able to do in other markets. So I think it's going to be very telling. Plus, as you recall, in Maine, they had a residency requirement. There was litigation over it, and the attorney general in Maine threw up their arms and said, we're not even going to defend the suit because we think that it's a loser. We don't think that the residency requirement can stand. And Mikos talks about that in his article. For anybody who's watching live, we posted the link to the article in the YouTube feed.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the residency has been shot down in a couple states. That doesn't hold water anymore. It's unconstitutional, or how the law is written. Yeah, it would be real interesting to see, because like I said, there's going to be some big war chests between Jane, 100 million. Remember, Ease is part of the Tilray group, part of Leafly in a way. It's been separated out for legal reasons, but that's all Peter Thiel. Again, everybody's loading up the powder in the war chest for this run at, well, wait a minute, if we control the user and we can tell them or influence what they want to buy, we're not going to hand off the order. I'm going to send it to one of my dispensaries that's in the state. Or again, this is with shipping. This is when everything starts shipping and you can get it in 12 hours, 24. It's going to be real interesting to see who has the traffic. And certainly Weed Maps has the war chest and traffic to compete with an Amazon. I don't think Leafly, unless there's some more money put in, we'll get there. But they do have the strain guide. And as we mentioned in that article, they put so much money, millions of dollars into ranking in that strain guide over 20 years now, that if it's going to come up number one, Blue Dream, and it's their strain guide, how do you not put an order now button if you're Leafly? I think that's where it's going with them. And how much do you want? An eighth, a pound? Here's the prices, zip code, and off you go. That's the future, as Amazon has taught us.
So interesting. So you can tell definitely Penny, who's on the chat, has read the article because she's put some comments about the Dormant Commerce Clause. And Mikos talks all about the Dormant Commerce Clause throughout his article. But there was a comment in there, doesn't federal prohibition presuppose a ban on interstate commerce? And what I find interesting is we're in a really turbulent time for marijuana right now with some of what's going on. The Apple announcement, the Mikos paper, and then and not to minimize anything, but Clarence Thomas made an interesting comment that was tearing up all the lines a couple of months ago, that the federal government may have gone so far that marijuana may no longer be illegal at the federal level. And that sounds almost like a highly conservative justice was teasing somebody to bring that case in front of the court and challenge whether or not marijuana actually belongs in the controlled substance schedules. That would be fascinating.
Yeah, that was a shock. And we covered that one. And like you just said, the real important thing, he's not a liberal judge. If anything, he's the most conservative judge. And for him to say federal marijuana policy does not make sense, it may actually be legal. This is a big cluster, you know what? That's a Supreme Court judge, like you said. Who did he send that message to, right? Who heard that and said, maybe we'll make a run at it? You know, Leafly, Weed Maps, Curaleaf, somebody with some deep pockets that wants to be the official. We were the lawsuit, right? That changed it 30 years from now. So we'll see. I hope so.
Yep. So that should be a very fascinating episode. We're going to get that set up for later in September. And I am flipping back and forth between Curt and looking at the chat to see what else we have. So Curt, what else is good? What else is going on in cannabis.net? What's the upcoming articles that you're going to be posting?
Oh, we got some good ones this weekend. I won't tell you what's tomorrow morning's article, but we're just working on the graphics for it. We have a lot up there right now. We've been doing a lot of content with interviews. A lot of brands are kind of responding to shows like this, and they're seeing the syndication, so they're kind of chiming in with their opinion. I'd highly encourage people to check out cannabis.net. We're probably up to 4 to 5 articles per day during the week. Kind of starting. We're becoming a tabloid or a Washington Post at this point. But no, it's great for finding. We have a full mapping. A full social network is kind of interesting because you're seeing people make comments, post their pictures of their plants. You know, hey, what's wrong with my cannabis leaf? It's yellow. That's kind of booming right now. And just appreciate all the support we get from this show and from everybody that listens. And if you have any comments or want to get in touch, just go to cannabis.net, fill out the contact us form, and myself or somebody else will get back to you as quick as we can.
That's I'm just taking a look at, somebody just mentioned Alex Bortel, who had a medical case.
Alexis, yep.
Alexis, I'm sorry. And okay, I know that's the Washington Marvin Washington litigation, correct?
Yeah, she was originally a patient that sued, almost got all the way up, and even the judge said, I think you're right, but it's not my court to make this ruling that you want, but you are right in fact. And she was epilepsy.
That was the dream team of plaintiffs, right? We had they had 4 plaintiffs. Each one came from a different perspective, and they were looking to overturn it. And the judge did. My recollection is when the judge dismissed it, because that's what caused Jeff Sessions to tear up one of the Cole memos. They had a hearing coming up. And to make sure they weren't going to lose that hearing, he said, well, we're going to just rescind that guidance memo. But I think Clarence Thomas's arguments cast that in a much, much different light at this point.
Well, you know, if you kind of sum it up at the 50,000 foot level, you have a very well-written, legal professor's opinion on interstate commerce being legal. You have a Supreme Court judge saying it could be legal even at the federal level, the way this is going right now and what we're seeing. But again, is that 3 months or 3 years? We do have a Democratic president, but not a big fan of weed at this point. But, it's better than, say, more conservative president being in that won't even, right now, Biden's latest is, kind of, will he forgive cannabis crimes, that are in federal arrest records? It seems like he will, but if it's nonviolent. So the advocates want the all arrest records if you're cannabis related, if there was violence involved in the arrest, but the White House is saying nonviolent. So every day it's a battle, and of course those people I hope get out, all of them, as we know, Steve D'Angelo and the Last Prisoner Project working on that, doing great work. But President Biden certainly he's not Bernie Sanders. Maybe I'll sum it up like that. He didn't come in and flip the switch.
Right. Well, yeah, he was not a friend of weed. I think if anything, he's being pulled by other parts of the party, and he doesn't have much choice in the matter, because he definitely needs the Senate on his side. They got a very thin majority. And when you get a couple of leaders of the Senate saying you got to legalize it, I don't think you can cause that level of a rift.
Oh, he had to get his transportation bill through. And as somebody said, well, yeah, why haven't you legalized weed? I think his response was, I got to get 250 million vaccinations done first. So I don't say he doesn't have other stuff on the plate when he wakes up in the morning. And of course, Afghanistan now. But hopefully it's somewhere, whether it's Schumer or Kamala Harris's plan or somebody pushing something to at least get the, again, Safe Banking Act. Can we just get some bank accounts so, clerks aren't sitting around with $100,000 in cash at night and this, crime possibility. So just the basics would be nice to get passed.
Yep. All right. I think, folks, we're coming closer to the end of today's show. We discussed having a bit of a curtailed show today, and I think we had a great time with JJ McKay. Curt did a good job reaching into his Rolodex on that one. We had a couple of other guests, but unfortunately, scheduling issues always come up. Well, we would have done a much deeper dive on the Apple issue, and we still may come back to that in one of the upcoming episodes. Any closing comments, Curt?
No, I appreciate it. That was JJ. Thank you very much. Check out the Fresh Toast. I'm cannabis.net. David is Pro Cannabis Media. You can see all the podcasts, the guests. You guys, maybe over 200 now. Interviews with the cannabis industry people. So if you're looking for somebody that you want to hear kind of one-on-one, whether it's a CEO or even a regional type person, Pro Cannabis Media probably has it in the inventory, so you can check them out.
Cool. And that's another show, and that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. It's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, the cannabis industry meets face-to-face in Las Vegas for the Cannabis Business Times Conference. Up, party down, and make a deal. We'll talk with a vendor from New York's Emerald Media Group who has just returned from that conference. Plus, North Carolina moves one step closer to starting a legal medicinal marijuana program. Then, we welcome a new executive director for Normal in Michigan. He's our own Rick Thompson. Plus, fallout from NBA basketball player Kevin Durant's commitment to weed maps to help remove stigma. But he missed the shot. All that on We Talk News next.
PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Talk News for another week. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Remember, Green Rush Live, the nation's only live weekly talk show designated for the business of cannabis, returns every week at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on PCM TV. On Friday afternoons, it streams live on ProCannabisMedia.com, our Roku and Apple Plus channels. But first up, face-to-face networking, educational panels, and the in-person trade show has been one of the most effective ways for this industry to market product and services. This past week in Las Vegas, hundreds of vendors set up shop at the Paris Hotel to do business face-to-face for the first time since the pandemic shut down the world in March of 2020. The Cannabis Business Times and GIE Media out of Ohio welcomed the industry back, and Emerald Media's Christina DiGiovanni was on hand. What was your reaction to actually getting out to a conference finally face-to-face?
Well, it was a pleasant surprise, the great turnout. There was a lot of momentum, a lot of energy going on. It was a really good turnout. There was plenty of people there. It was, Vegas does it right. The conferences in Vegas are really exciting, and they're very special. And I was very excited to exhibit at this one. It's my first time exhibiting in Las Vegas. I used to exhibit on a regular basis before the pandemic, but since COVID hit, this is the first time we've exhibited, and it was great. I had a great time, great people, great all around.
The dad in me wants to know, did you feel safe?
I felt very safe. I felt incredibly safe. Nevada has a mask mandate going on right now, so coming from New York, we got rid of the mask mandate. Now it's slowly starting to come back. So that was a little different, but I wasn't worried about COVID. I had a great time. I think everyone that showed up, was there for a purpose, and they didn't want to let COVID continue to, run their fears. So.
And of course, you go to these conferences with the idea to make deals, to meet people. You're out there talking about your products, your services. Did you make some deals? Were you happy with that response? You're smiling. I'm going to guess yes.
Well, I'll tell you, I met some great people. We had great conversations. Time will tell in the follow-ups. Talk is very cheap, but, that being said, I spoke to many people who I believe will want to be media partners of ours, and lots of individuals either in the industry or trying to get into the industry that need a little help. They need some content written for their website. They need some articles done on them. They need some videos produced. So there's certainly a need out there in the marketing world, especially for cannabis businesses, and I hope to see some of those individuals again in the near future.
Now, of course, the next big conference in Las Vegas is MJ BizCon in October. Will you be there?
I believe I will be there. MJ BizCon is a huge one, can be a little overwhelming. I don't know if I've ever made it around to all the booths before. But again, it's a reunion. It's a cannabis reunion. And in this industry, when, networking and who is so important, these events are crucial for our industry. So, yes, I do plan on being there.
Last week, one of the biggest stories in the cannabis industry was the fact that Kevin Durant, a two-time NBA champion, superstar of the NBA, a gold medalist, and current member of the Brooklyn Nets, decided to combine his own boardroom media group with Weedmaps. It's a combined venture designed to battle the stigma of cannabis as a still federally illegal substance that is a legal entity in 18 or 19 states, and another 36 plus states have medicinal marijuana programs. However, during the announcement on the Boardroom's Out of Office podcast, Durant never explained his own use of the product. And many cannabis media representatives like our own Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report feel that this was one shot that Durant missed.
It's like an alley-oop, right? Somebody threw the ball right by the rim. He did not dunk it.
No.
He didn't dunk it. I'm like, Kevin, what are you doing?
No, he didn't. If anything, he tickled the twine, but without throwing the ball down into the hole.
I know.
Right?
I know. They asked him, I guess for everybody in listening, right? They asked, he had come out and saying that one of his reasons for joining the industry was to end the stigma against cannabis. And they asked him in the interview, do you use it? And he said, kind of, none of your business, kind of. Like, I'm going to keep that private. That was the perfect opportunity to throw down and say, yes, I use it. And I know you guys know this already, but I'm kind of the best basketball player in the entire world. And I use it and I'm okay.
That's right. And it wasn't, and it's not a performance enhancer, right? It just is a life enhancer. Ask Sha'Carri Richardson that, right?
There's the other thing, and I thought that was so fascinating. These two things are so close together because I think what the great part of the conversation that she started was the many things that cannabis is good for.
Right.
Regardless of, not at the starting line, not like as a steroidy kind of an advantage, that kind of thing.
Right.
But how normal, decent, good people can use it for actually very normal human reasons.
Right.
And they're still just fine persons. Thank you very much. They're just fine, right?
Right.
Hello again. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. I guess the cookies do not crumble. Gage Cannabis Corporation has extended their in-state deal with the Cookies brand for another 2 years. The total deal involves opening 12 Cookies branded stores in Michigan and opening special display areas called Cookies Corners in every other Gage Cannabis store. All of this happens by the end of 2024. The Cookies 8 Mile store in Detroit was described by Wrapper and Cookies co-founder Berner as one of our highest performing stores in America. This deal ensures Michigan will have the strongest cookies presence of any state other than California. Speaking of Gage, they're doing a booming business. Last year in the second quarter, they had 2 cultivation facilities, but now they're up to 9. That's 3 of their own and 6 contracted facilities, and before the end of the year, they'll be up to 15 grow sites. All that growing makes a lot of money, and Gage's second quarter 2021 was about $26.4 million. Gage also released some very interesting data. They claim to sell pounds for an average of about $5,100, where the regulated marketplace average is about $3,500. Their average basket size was $152 too, which is very good, and they plan on performing all processing in-house by the end of the year. Now, Gage isn't the only one with good sales figures to boast about. The entire state of Michigan brought $171 million worth of cannabis in the regulated market during the month of July. That's $48 million in medical and $123 million in adult use cannabis products. Of that $123 million, $63.5 million was in flower sales alone, with another almost $10 million in shake and trim sales. Vape carts in at about $26 million for July in the adult use market, and infused edibles made up about $16.5 million. July was, of course, another record month for cannabis sales in Michigan's regulated market. Final story. The Michigan chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws has elected new board members and a new executive director. Retiring from the board are Joe White, Brett Forrester, Jessica Finch, and past executive director Matthew Abel. Joining the board are Tom Levine and Colin McDougall as members, Annette Sarfaw as deputy director, Zara Abbas as board secretary, and the new executive director from Normal of Michigan is the guy doing the Michigan Report every week here on Pro Cannabis Media's Weed Talk News. Congratulations to all the new board members. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson for Weed Talk News.
While the state of New York waits for the launch of that state's legal adult use market, a Massachusetts-based holding company called Tilt Holdings has cut a deal with the Shinnecock Indian Nation in Long Island, and that will create a vertically integrated cannabis company called Little Beach Harvest. What does that mean? Well, it means that the first place to open sales of cannabis for adults in New York could be on the Hamptons on Shinnecock land. The next question, of course, is when will it be open? And the answer is, well, as soon as possible, since it has to do with financing, stock trade, and of course, regulations. Here's Ron Marshalsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report. Ron?
I'm Ron Marshalsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. The international cannabis brand Cookies is going to be opening a brand new retail store in Worcester, and it will also be their very first East Coast storefront. Gilbert Malam, also known as Berner, is the co-founder and CEO of Cookies and is also a Bay Area rapper. He was quoted as saying, "I fell in love with Massachusetts a while back at one of my first shows out there. The fire marshal shut down my show because the crowd was smoking and the venue immediately turned into a hotbox. The energy was so pure and so was the love for cannabis. When we saw that Massachusetts was the first place on the East Coast to legalize cannabis, we had to enter the market. We have great production partners and we look forward to our store opening in Worcester." Cookies will host their grand opening for their storefront on Saturday, August 28th at 10 a.m., located at 118 Cambridge Street in Worcester. With the recent heat wave we've gotten in this state, it's amazing news that there will be more cannabis ice cream coming to Massachusetts. Emac and Bolio's of Boston and Maramed of Norwood are partnering to launch a new line of cannabis-infused ice cream later this year. Specifics about these frozen edibles are still under wraps, including exactly when they'll be hitting dispensary shelves and how many milligrams of THC they'll actually contain. But once these delicious treats are ready for shelves, the first ones they'll be on are in Massachusetts. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshalsea.
The legislature in North Carolina continues to move forward towards decriminalizing cannabis in that state and starting a medical marijuana program. However, the Republican-controlled Congress there in North Carolina has moved the requirements for qualifications to be the strictest in the nation. Still, any progress is considered a success, and there are still a few more committee stops to go with this bill before it goes to a vote on the Senate floor. No such issue in the state of Vermont, where progress continues on opening their adult use market. Here's Jessie Lynn Dolan with an update from the Green Mountain State. Jessie Lynn?
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. Congratulations goes out to Tito Byrne and his crew at the Byrne Gallery for the Outstanding Television Commercial Award from the Vermont Association of Broadcasters for their commercial and jingle they produced last winter for WCAX TV called Santa's High. Way to go, Byrne Gallery. The Marijuana for Symptom Relief Oversight Committee met again this week to continue discussions around the makeup and mission of the board moving forward. Cannabis Commissioner James Pepper attended and spoke to the need for cultivators, caregivers, and patients, both registered and those who are not currently registered in the medical program, to have a voice and representation on the board moving forward. This is a big win for cultivators and patients alike, so thank you, Commissioner Pepper. On Wednesday, August 25th, the Vermont Growers Association and the Vermont Cannabis Nurses Association joined Canatrim for their first fellowship, the start of the Vermont Growers Association's business development events and industry mixer series. Held at the 14th Star Brewery in St. Albans, participants discussed how to best navigate Vermont's cannabis rules and regulations and networked with one another, while Canatrim solicited signatures for St. Albans' petition to opt into the retail adult use market. Stay tuned for more industry mixers coming soon. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
From one coast to the left coast next. Lots of movement always in the California market. However, it's the wildfires and drought that continues to be the biggest challenges in the California cannabis industry. And we are so fortunate to have Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report now working with us weekly here on Weed Talk News. Here's his cannabis report from California. Chris?
I'm Christopher Smith of the American Cannabis Report with the California Roundup for Weed Talk News. California is making buckets of ducats from cannabis. And here's yet another way that California is the center of the cannabis universe. The Golden State is responsible for more than half the cannabis tax revenues in the United States. Despite the fumbles of our legal bureaucracy, our little industry has generated $2.8 billion since our adult use market began 3 years ago. And all the rest of the states combined have generated $5.1 billion, but that's over 7 years. Now, wildfires are a growing threat here. Newsom asks for federal help. Climate change plus an epic drought in California equals wildfires that seem to be bigger and earlier every year. On Monday, Governor Gavin Newsom formally requested a major disaster declaration from President Joe Biden in order to get additional federal resources to combat wildfires in 8 California counties, including Trinity County up near the Oregon border. So Trinity County is important because it's part of the famed Emerald Triangle, where the world's best weed is grown. Right now, there are 4 major out-of-control wildfires in the area, and it's only August. Fire season goes until December at least. A licensed dispensary chain is fighting the illicit market, claiming a conspiracy. So cannabis dispensary chain March and Ash alleges that a long list of people and business entities are effectively supporting San Diego's illicit weed trade and hurting legal operators. The civil suit alleges that disgraced former San Diego Sheriff's Captain Marco Garmo allowed unlicensed dispensaries to operate and even tipped one off about a raid. The San Diego Reader, which is an alt-weekly newspaper, runs ads for unlicensed dispensaries, ATMs located in unlicensed dispensaries, and the landlords who rent to them,
are supporting the illicit business and causing real economic harm to those who have followed the rules. Ryan's Law would allow terminally ill patients to use cannabis. So California Democratic Senator Ben Hueso has created a bill dubbed Ryan's Law, which would provide relief, compassion, and dignity to Californians during the most vulnerable time in their lives by allowing the use of medical or medicinal cannabis in healthcare facilities for Californians who are terminally ill. Hueso has been assured that cannabis use in this circumstance would not impact federal funding to hospitals and that provide this service, and so the federal government is considering similar action. And lastly, like Afghanistan, President Biden needs to state the obvious. The war on cannabis is over. The major news this week is all about Afghanistan and the end of the war there. Well, I'm calling on President Biden to declare an end to another war that started in 1937 and has also failed, the war against cannabis. 9 in 10 Americans now agree that cannabis should be legalized. 38 states have legalized it in some way. Hundreds of thousands of Americans earn their living in their industry, which generates billions of dollars in tax revenues. So Elvis has left the building, Mr. President. It's time to deal with reality and end the war on cannabis. And I'm Christopher Smith for the American Cannabis Report, reporting for Weed Talk News.
There was a major decision in the state of Texas that has now thrown out a 2019 law that should open the door for the development of a major hemp market in that great big state. That law outlawed smokable hemp, and now the door is open for development in a hemp market that could exceed $400 million annually as soon as 2025. In Washington, D.C., most of Congress is still on recess, but the Supreme Court denied the appeals of 2 companies who were challenging the constitutionality of that cursed 280E provision. You know that one. It disallows cannabis businesses from taking standard business deductions. That pretty much leaves the responsibility of cannabis reform right back in the hands of Congress whenever they get back to work. One guy who is always working is Vote Pro podcast Phil Adams. He has our DC report. Phil.
Hi, this is Phil Adams from Vote Pro podcast, and this is the Weed Talk News DC report. The head of the National Institute on Drug Abuse admits that her fears about legalization bringing an increase in teen cannabis use were unfounded. In a recent podcast, NIDA Director Nora Volkow acknowledged that she expected use among adolescents to go up as states legalize cannabis, but admitted that, quote, overall, it hasn't. Volkow's comments were made on a podcast hosted by Drug Policy Alliance founder Ethan Nadelman. Volkow went on to discuss the need to shift from a punitive approach to drug use to one that treats it as a public health concern. The Department of Energy is funding a research project to develop a hemp fiber insulation product that's better for the environment and public health than conventional insulation. The DOE is supporting research and testing of hemp wool developed by the Idaho-based firm Hempitecture. To that end, they have awarded the company's COO, Tommy Gibbons, an annual stipend of $90,000 and as much as $200,000 for research into the potential of a non-toxic hemp-based alternative to traditional insulation. Hemp wool is designed to have a strong thermal resistance and a low carbon footprint. California Governor Gavin Newsom is teaming up with the Department of Health and Human Services to explore the use of medical marijuana in hospitals. In a response to a letter from California State Senator Ben Hueso, Newsom, along with HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra, said they are looking into whether hospitals and other healthcare facilities in legal states could allow terminally ill patients to be treated with medical cannabis without jeopardizing federal funding. Several months ago, Hueso was informed by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services that there are no federal regulations in place that specifically address this issue, nor were they aware of any facility whose funding was pulled for allowing patients to use medical cannabis. In 2019, Hueso introduced the Compassionate Access to Medical Cannabis Act to the California legislature. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
Well, that'll do it for this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young. For everyone here at Pro Cannabis Media, have a safe Labor Day weekend. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.